amazing board colleagues for your support and all that you've done to support this virtual gala. And so for those of you who we are new to, Green Card Voices was born from the idea that the broad narrative of current immigrants should be communicated in a way that's true to each immigrant story. And we seek to be a new lens for those in the immigration dialogue. And the way we do this is by building bridges between immigrants, non-immigrants, and advocates from across the country by sharing firsthand immigrant stories. You'll experience some of that in a very powerful way today. Foreign-born Americans helping us see the wave of immigrants as individuals with interesting stories of family, hard work, and cultural diversity. And our mission is to utilize digital storytelling to share personal narratives of America's immigrants, fostering tolerance, and establishing a better understanding between the immigrant and non-immigrant populations. Our dynamic video-based platform is designed to empower a variety of educational institutions, community groups, and individuals alike to acquire first-person perspective about immigrants' lives, increasing the appreciation of the immigrant experience in America. And so with that, I will give you an overview of where we're going today. We have a wonderful lineup. As I mentioned, we will be hearing from our executive director, Taya, here shortly. And after that, you'll have an opportunity to engage in a particularly exciting experience that we call Story Stitch. And so to give you a sense of Story Stitch, as you kind of hear the mission and vision of our organization, I wanted to share a little bit of a story from my background. So my family came to the United States from Cuba in the 60s, and as a part of the Afro-Cuban experience and tradition, there's a very strong orature or oral tradition. And I think of Story Stitch and I think of this virtual gala connected to a story called Oshetura, which is a story of a creation story, actually. And so I'm going to indulge you all in a little bit of the story. I think as adults, we need to hear stories too. And so the story of Ashetura is a story of the creation of Earth. And in this story, you have the gods and goddesses that descend upon Earth to go about creating the Earth. And it quickly becomes clear that the male gods are kind of dominating the space. Particularly a few of these male gods are coming to the fore. You have Chango, who's kind of the archetypical male power presence, the god of thunder and lightning, the god of political organization. You have Obatala, who is the god of kind of the ethical fabric of a society and of creation in many ways. You have Ogun, who's the warrior, who is the creator, who is the blacksmith, the person who comes up with the technology that's needed to meet the challenge. And so they kind of descend and start doing their thing. And of course, with them is the goddess Oshun. Oshun being the goddess of forgiveness, of love, of sweet water, of female sensuality. And there's quickly this narrative that emerges of kind of, we have everything we need to handle this little Earth. We've created this whole universe. We really don't need Oshun here. And so Oshun, hears this and is like, oh, okay, very good. And retires to the moon, taking with her the sweet water. And it doesn't take long for the rest of these gods to become quickly frustrated as they quickly discover that without sweet water, their work, their technology, their political organization, their ethics, nothing is happening. Nothing is coming to fruition. There is no food. There is no sustainability. There are no tools. And so they return to the creator quite frustrated. And the creator says, yeah, you ought to be frustrated because you've actually forgotten about someone who's quite important. There's someone missing from the group that I sent to complete this task. And so they humbly return to Oshun and ask forgiveness and provide offering. And she accepts their apology, but she does quite importantly say to them Not only have I been offended that you have the audacity to think that you could complete this task without me, but it's quite important that you not let this happen again. And so as I think about kind of Mother Earth and what we're experiencing through this pandemic, from my perspective, I think of this story of the divine feminine and Oshun, and the ecological macro level story of what I hope we're all learning about sustainability through this experience. But I also think of Story Stitch, and I think of combining kind of that strength of Ogun, the technology, with the compassion, the storytelling, the love, and the community building of Oshun, of the divine feminine. And Story Stitch, as you'll hear about here in a bit, really beautifully gives us a method and a strategy to build community at a time where so many folks are thirsting for that, and particularly now as we practice physical distancing, there's even an increased importance of this sort of engagement. And so welcome. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our talented executive director, Dr. Taya Rosman-Clark.
Truly unprecedented times, as Louise shared so well. So, I was born and grew up in Yugoslavia, and recently I was talking to my Bosnian friends who found these quarantine times very similar to the siege of Sarajevo, the Bosnian capital, which held Winter Olympics only 8 years.
Yeah, let me pause you for a moment. If I forgot to mention this, you all have the capability in your options. If you put your cursor over the gray singular rectangle, you should get the option to show active speaker video. So I'd invite you to go ahead and click that as Taya's sharing so that you'll be able to see Taya's visual as she's sharing. Sorry, Taya, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I can start over. I was just sharing that I probably look better than I have in a month. So you take a good look. Okay, so I will start over. So thank you, Louise, so much. As I mentioned, I was born and grew up in Yugoslavia, and recently I was talking to my Bosnian friends who found these quarantine times very similar to the siege of Sarajevo, Bosnian capital that held Winter Olympics in 1984, just 8 years before the siege began. It began on April 5th, so very, very similar time in 1992, and it lasted for 1,425 days. During these times, people too stayed cooped up in their homes, but there was no internet, no electricity, no running water. So people were forced to go out to get food and water and wood for heating in the winter. When they were outside, snipers and bombs would fall, resulting in the 11,541 dead, including 1,601 children. An average number of grenades shot at the city daily was 329. Record numbers of grenades shot in a single day was 3,777 on July 22nd, 1993. Ultimately, the total number of grenades that hit Sarajevo was close to 500,000. I'm sharing this to let you know that while our situation is difficult, there is so much we can be grateful for too. Since the coronavirus has taken hold on our world, we've all had to learn how to adapt and be resilient. I'm sure many of you on the call today could share a story from your own lives of how you have, in large and small ways, adjusted to this new normal. I'd like to share with you some of the projects we've been focusing on over the past couple of months. As many of you already know, Green Card Voices' focus has always been about building bridges and empathy through storytelling. Our programs and services aim to provide educators, K-12 schools, colleges, and community groups with the tools they need to foster understanding between people, combat xenophobia, and develop appreciation for the many ways immigrants serve and enrich our cities, towns, and rural areas. As our gala theme implies, when we share stories, we become neighbors. So our work involves the recording of the stories of now 450 immigrants and refugees that come from 130 different countries, and publishing these narratives in our book series, which now includes 8 books featuring student authors from 6 cities: Minneapolis, Fargo, St. Paul, Madison, Milwaukee, and Atlanta, and 40 entrepreneurs in 2 different volumes, both entrepreneurs and STEM professionals that are calling Minnesota their home. Our exhibits are featured in libraries, museums, and community centers across the US. Our first podcast season, that launched in November 2019, has 11 most compelling stories we thought deserve to be featured on this platform and reach a new audience of podcast lovers. And our Story Stitch card game, that you will have a chance to play just in a few moments, has become an Amazon bestseller in the card game category, a favorite of US Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and has sold over 4,000 decks. Like many other nonprofits today, the coronavirus pandemic has changed our usual ways of operating. For Green Card Voices, that meant that an almost overnight drop in revenue from books and Story Stitch sales, exhibit rentals, speaking engagements at conferences, and fundraising opportunities. For a small nonprofit like ours, that is already a 30% decrease of our annual projected revenue. But we did not pause or lose hope. We immediately went to work reimagining all our products and services to find ways to make them accessible online and relevant in our time now, a world in the midst of pandemic. A world that needs community, understanding, and empathy more than ever before. Here are a few examples that we are working on now to address this new world. We know that our books help educators develop curriculum. With schools moving to online learning, we knew we needed to turn our library of Green Card Voices books into ebooks. I'm happy to say that they are now available in that format. Story Stitch really took off this year, and we trained 75 people from places as diverse as Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and even South Korea. And we trained them on how to facilitate Story Stitch circles. We knew we had to co-create this game once more for these days of social distancing and shelter-in-place lives. Our team developed a way to play the game virtually using Zoom, which you will test today. Rewrote instructions and ground rules to serve a virtual delivery, and developed a new way to train facilitators also virtually. So in just 2 months, we adapted the game, developed materials, and piloted multiple Story Stitch virtual events to come with a new way for educators and public to use this powerful conversation game to help people through this difficult time. And to make Story Stitch even more relevant, we developed a set of COVID-19 related questions for participants to process their feelings, share inspiration and common humanity on the topic that fills our thoughts these days. But I'm most proud, and I hope you can all see the PowerPoint. You can see the PowerPoint? But I'm most proud of the way our team has moved quickly to address 2 very, very critical issues. The first critical issue is xenophobia, and in particular, the targeting of our Asian American community members, as Louise shared. When we are inside our homes, we can be eluded by a belief that xenophobia has vanished, when in fact it is on the rise. For that reason, we launched our hashtag Love Your Asian Neighbors social media campaign on March 25th, modeling it on the hashtag Love a Muslim Day we supported during the Muslim ban a few years ago. Our current campaign shares our Asian stories with a goal of countering xenophobia and targeted anti-Asian prejudice and violence by celebrating Asians in the US and the world. On the second screen right now, you see 3 different illustrations. These powerful images were commissioned by Green Card Voices and created by illustrators Sunshine Gao, Ana Hinojosa, and Corey Lin to address the xenophobia that Asian Americans face today. On the left-hand side, you see an essential worker, a nurse, Hmong nurse. It's depicted using a Hmong story cloth tradition, how after working all day, taking care of the COVID-19 patients, comes home to find a racist note. On the right-hand side, you see an illustration by Ana Hinojosa depicting how we all need to come together and protect those most vulnerable by being united and speaking up whenever we can. I will give you a moment to look at those images.
Thank you, Taya. And as you're processing, please feel free. These are such powerful works. Feel free to offer perspective in the chat of what's coming up as you take in these images and really sit with all what Taya has described as is our context and particularly the stand that Green Card Voices is taking.
And Julie, if you would move on to the third image by Corey Lin. Corey Lin has lived in Minneapolis for a long time. She has recently moved to Chicago and has done a lot of research about the Chicago Chinatown, but also Chinatowns around the US. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you look at the image, but what we are seeing is that Chinatowns across the United States have been just foodie meccas, tourist attractions, centers for people of all walks of life, different backgrounds to come together and experience community, history, tradition, arts, religion. And what we're seeing now is a very sad picture, people being afraid or deliberately not going there at all, and the businesses having to shut down. So I'll give you a moment too. So finally, I also want to add that this week we launched a brand new Green Card Voices podcast season that will bring forth a completely new format as we focus on the issues facing Asian American communities during the COVID-19 pandemic. Green Card Voices staff member Tri Vo, a Vietnamese American, is the host. And our first episode features both Rabe and Ushina Hussein talking about community care in response to COVID-19. And I ask you to check it out, please. So that was the first critical issue that we're addressing. And the second critical issue, which is just as overwhelming, frankly, is addressing how COVID-19 impacts refugees in camps around the world. we were approached by ALIGHT, formerly known as American Refugee Committee, or ARC. I'm sure many of you are familiar with them, to help them with their campaign to inform refugees in the camps on ways to keep safe and healthy during this pandemic. We've used our storyteller network of now 450 people, many of whom themselves lived in refugee camps, many of whom still have family and friends in those refugee camps. And we are doing everything we can to spread the information, the health messaging through our network, because the conditions in the refugee camps are already extremely difficult, and we are doing everything we can for the conditions not to get worse because of the COVID-19. We are determined to continue to raise awareness on these two issues, and the donations we receive from you, our supporters, make a difference in helping us do this work. COVID-19 hit us quickly, and since we didn't anticipate these two focus areas in our strategic planning, we have no grants that are directly supporting this work. Please consider making an extra gift to Green Card Voices if you can, so that we can help fund these critical programs. So yeah, this is all from me. Thank you for your support. If you know, I know that you're excited to go on and get to the story stitch part of the gala. And I only have this to say, share your stories, connect with your neighbors. That's how we build inclusive and integrated communities, one story at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Taya, and thank you to the team for what I'm going to call heroic work at a time when, in particular, our Asian communities are so desperately needing our voice and needing our platform to give voice to their own experiences, as well as our refugee communities. And so thank you for that powerful sharing. And as you said, these are unprecedented times. And I think from my perspective, our work is perhaps more critical now than ever in many ways. And so as we head into our next section, we're reminded that, as Taya shared, the power and the essence of our work is that human story. And stories are what I believe, and many societies around the world have known for some time, is that healing salve that connects us, that give us hope, that give us resilience, that give us a sense of grounding during very challenging situations. They give us a window into the lives and the experiences of others that we might not have otherwise. And so we are going to shift into a very engaging part of our experience here with the playing of Story Stitch, as Taya shared. You will be electronically placed into Zoom breakout rooms, so there is nothing for you to do. It will just happen. We're very grateful. We are constantly certifying folks who are Story Stitch facilitators, so a big thank you to our virtual Story Stitch facilitators who stepped up to fill this critical need for us for our virtual gala. We appreciate you all so much. And if anyone wants information on how you can become certified as a Story Stitch facilitator, please contact us. And in your virtual groups, we have been intentional in mixing you up. So this is not the gala of old where you come sit down at a table with your family and friends and that's where the conversation stays. We will be mixing you up, and you will be mixed up with folks of different ages, different ethnicities, and different backgrounds. So we will have about an hour and 15 minutes to engage in that space. And then it's absolutely a must that you come back to our general space, because you are going to hear an absolutely amazing, powerful voice from one of our youth storytellers that you will not want to miss. So thank you all, and enjoy your Story Stitch session. And you all got a taste of the power of Story Stitch for those that are new to Story Stitch. So let's give an opportunity for folks to go ahead and provide a one-word check-in as you come out of Story Stitch. So go ahead and put a one-word check-in of where are you coming out of your Story Stitch conversation. Go ahead and add that in the chat if you would. Awesome. I'm seeing grateful. I'm seeing wow. I'm seeing thankful, held, connected, warm, happy, fun, united, loved, loved it, relieved, connected, peace, together, understood, thankful, rejuvenated, appreciative, inspired, curious, interconnected, joyful, sweet. So just think about how this experience can live in your organizations. As you all know, these are available to you. We were having a conversation the other day as a board around, as we thought about our virtual gala, telling stories, becoming neighbors, how in my experience, particularly in the Twin Cities, we don't always know our neighbors. So what would it be during this COVID era to go ahead and play some story stitch with your actual neighbors as we can't come together physically in the way that we typically can. So thank you again to our amazing facilitators. And it is now my honor and pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is just going to blow you away. I'm just going to tell you like that. This young man is one of our authors from our Milwaukee and Madison book. So with that, I'm going to introduce Vy Luong to share his voice. So Vy, welcome.
Thank you. Um, Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see from the screen that I don't have much hair anymore. So I tried to wear a similar shirt to tell you that that's still me. Okay. I was born in a very small town of Châu Thanh in Vietnam. It is about 3 hours south of Ho Chi Minh City. I remember when I was around 4 or 5, we were extremely poor. The house was very old. It was starting to crumble down, and we didn't have a toilet. We were in a big household of 10 people, and we all relied on my mother, who at the time was the only source of income. Our meals every day consisted of only rice and potatoes. There was no way to think one day I would be able to live a more comfortable life. After my brother was born, my cousins were old enough to find jobs and help my mom pay expenses. We finally had the blessing to be able to afford and install a toilet in our home. Despite the poverty and limited resources, I focused on my schooling and helped out at the church next to my house. When I was in 6th grade, I was informed by my mom that they had found my long-lost grandfather. Up until that point, I've never heard anyone mention my grandfather before. He is an American and served in the Vietnam War. He met my grandmother in Vietnam and had my mom in 1969, which is near the end of the war in 1975. After the war was over, he returned to the US and they lost contact for almost 40 years. A mutual friend of my grandparents helped us reconnect with my grandfather in 2011. And by November 2012, we were on the plane to the United States. The process was long and filled with anxiety. We had an emergency landing in Alaska, and for the first time ever, we were stranded with zero English and no idea of what to come. Luckily, we found an old Vietnamese couple that helped us for the night in Alaska. The next morning, we were back on our journey to Madison, Wisconsin. The trip took a total of 3 days to complete. There were many challenges at home and at school in a new country. The language barrier made me feel like the smallest person in the world. On top of that, middle schoolers are known to not be the friendliest. I was bullied by a group of students every day for my language struggles and clothing without being able to communicate with teachers. At home, I had to learn how to write checks to pay bills, do laundry, read mail, while on top of having to study. However, such challenges taught me to be a hard worker and to never stop pushing myself. My mother's perseverance shaped who I am today. She never showed weaknesses in the worst scenarios. Despite the language barrier, She found a job within the first week of being in the United States. She worked every day without rest in order to provide for us all. Such an admirable trait of selflessness really stuck with me ever since. I have taken her perseverance and applied it into my study since 6th grade. I pushed myself to my limits and beyond. I took all my chances when it comes to honors and AP classes. I wanted to be better than all my peers, so I never stopped pushing myself. The fact that I got to share my story with my voice let other youths like me know that they are not alone and they should not be afraid of change. The publication of my book validates my story and gave me a platform to impact thousands of immigrants in America. It's not often that someone asks about who I am or what my story is. I did not have anyone who had been in my shoes to look at and keep myself motivated. And now, to have Green Card Youth Voices published, young immigrants have someone to look up to and keep faith that they will also be successful. Currently, I am a freshman at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I am majoring in biochemistry and completing my global health certificate. I chose this path because I was inspired by my old family physician. When we first arrived in the United States, the feeling of uncertainties and loneliness were tremendous. My family physician took care of us beyond healthcare. She helped me and my brother with school supplies, clothing, and even toys to comfort us. I want to be able to do the same for future families, especially immigrant families, because I know what it feels like to be lifted out of loneliness and uncertainties. The empowerment of youths can be done in many ways. The method that has changed my life the most was the Green Card Voices organization. Completing the Youth Voices book has reminded me of my values and strengths, while empowering other youths with similar stories to feel seen and motivated. Since the book was published in September 2019, many opportunities opened up for me on the UW-Madison campus. I had the chance to introduce Green Card Voices to my Cal's Quick Start cohort last summer. I was also featured in the February issue of Grow magazine by the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences. I had an opportunity to travel to the University of Oshkosh for book readings. And just this March, I was a guest speaker at the UW-Madison's Global Learning Summit. I shared my story in front of over 100 students and teachers who come from across Wisconsin to participate in Wisconsin's Global School Network, which offers students global learning opportunities through the Global Education Achievement Certificate Program. And you can listen to more of my story at the GCV podcast on our major podcast platforms. Such opportunities are why I want other immigrant youths to take me and my story as an inspiration to keep going, and one day share their stories to inspire the next generation of young talents. The next wave of young talents is ready to share their story, and by donating, you can help validate their stories and the immigrant experience as a whole. Now let's watch the trailer for the next Green Card Youth Voices book.
It's working now.
I'm from Puerto Rico.
I was born and raised in Istanbul.
In Burundi.
I born in Bangladesh.
I was born in Belarus in 2005 in the city of Gomel.
I was born in Somali, Mogadishu, Somali.
I was born in Tanzania.
We didn't have a lot of money, but it was good life we was living.
It was the best part of my life when I grew up in Yemen.
It was me, my mom, my dad, and my brother, and the dog.
So I was born in Greece, Kastoria. My parents had moved there because there was a war in Albania in the 1997.
In September 16 was Hurricane Maria passed to Puerto Rico. I was so scared because it was my first hurricane.
We have a hard time in Burundi because we did not have enough food to eat. We don't have many things like water.
There come the day which we had to stop from school because of the money.
We was having the same problem because they were burning Shia people like houses.
In 2016, my mom won the green card lottery.
They tell us that you have to go in the USA. I was so happy that day. I feel like, oh my God, this is not true.
Mi madrina called my mom and say, come to Rochester, New York. I can help you.
I have 10 years without seeing my dad. That's why it was exciting.
I didn't know what to say. I was really nervous and excited, but nervous and sad.
It was like a little bit sad for me because I had to leave all the things that I used to and get set in a new place.
Here I have my new friend, new teacher, and new school.
Since I came in Buffalo, I was good. School is good.
I want to be a doctor. I don't know what type of doctor, but I want to be a doctor and like have a family of my own.
Have work, house, a family.
In the future, I will go to college and study physician therapy.
I don't want to stay in America for a lot, like for the rest of my life. I want to go back and forth to Yemen and to America.
I was thinking I was going to college. I was doing something for my father is proud of me. I was thinking I was going to be an art teacher. I was like the art, so.
I'm also really interested in like child rights and especially refugee children because all that I've gone through kind of opened my eyes to the struggles that refugees or immigrants face when coming here. So for especially children, I want to help them in any way I can and show them that they're not alone in this process.
So I had the honor of traveling to Rochester and Buffalo this past January and record the 30 amazing stories of some of the students that you just saw in the trailer. And despite being there and working on this trailer for you in the past few weeks, just seeing this, you know, no matter how many times I see it, I always get touched. And I cannot wait to see the transformation that will take place in the coming months when these young people will become leaders, just like Vy and Zainab and Muhammad, who are our star authors of our previous books. Yeah, you know, in this COVID-19 world, we need to pivot, you know, unfortunately, once again, and look at another approach to launch the book and make it successful, just like all the last 5. Because we owe it to these young people who had shared the stories. And for that, we need your help. And in the chat box, you will see a link to the donation page. And we ask you to donate, if you can, whatever amount to make it possible for us to create an unforgettable virtual book launch and promote this book initially in an ebook format. And later, when things get back to normal, we would love to celebrate the stories of these young people in person and with deep, deep gratitude. And I ask you to please make that possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Taya. Vy, just reading through the chat here, you're getting all kinds of love. Thank you for sharing your story. Very moving. Great to hear your story. So touching. Continue to share it. So thank you for that powerful, powerful piece. I'm glad I had tissue near me. So thank you so much, Vy. It was powerful. And as Taya mentioned, please check the chat box. This is a way that we can continue to keep this powerful work alive. These voices, as we just heard, and the opportunity to continue to create these platforms. As Taya talked about, the challenges that the organization is facing in this extraordinary time. This is absolutely a time when our support is needed, Please know that another way to support is by sharing the link that you'll see in the chat box as well. So please push that link out to your networks and offer that to your communities so that they can also learn of our good work and how they can be of support. And so with that, that concludes our programming. You all can say you were a part of the first experience in this format. We are deeply appreciative to each and every one of you. We know that so much is going on in your world and in your family's world, that for you to have made this time and made this commitment to Green Card Voices, I know I speak for the entire organization, means everything to us and is not lost on us. So we thank you. Please stay connected to us. Stay well, and we will unmute here for a moment so that folks can say goodbye to folks as you leave the space. But thank you all. Stay well, and we appreciate everything. Have a wonderful night.
And if you guys want to unmute yourself so you could give a round of applause for Vy for sharing his story.
Yes, Vy.
Thank you.